Going live. Hi everybody, welcome to the very first Deep in the Bush. And with me I have Lee-Anne Yammin, but just quickly to explain what this show is, as we haven't done it before. It's an idea for a place that conservationists can get together, or people interested in conservation, learn what the people out in the field are doing, or real veterans. And my personal interest is from a background of safari guiding, which led me into conservation. I began in that in 1994 in South Africa, also worked in Botswana, Namibia, and ventured up into places like Angola recently. And everywhere you go, it's so exciting to be a part of conservation in its many, many different forms. With me today, I have Lee-Anne Yammin, not physically with me. She's sitting in South Africa and I'm in the UK. It's a form of COVID exile. She's been kind enough to join us. She is the founder of a group called Our Horn Is Not Medicine. Lee-Anne, can you tell us what Our Horn Is Not Medicine is and what they do?
Sure. So thanks firstly for having me. It's really nice to be having this chat with you, Peter. Like yourself, I also started as a guide in 2010. And sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in 2010, I started guiding over here where I'm based in the Greater Kruger Park on a property called Ngala. And yeah, poaching had sort of picked up a little bit in 2008. And then I remember in 2011, we were seeing more incursions on our property. We had more gunshots that we could hear while we were out on game drive. We were noticing more tracks, suspicious tracks on the roads while we were out in the morning, first thing. And yeah, so I was totally aware of this sudden increase. And in January 2012, I was out with my guests on a safari. And that is when I found the first rhino carcass that I had ever seen, very, very fresh. And it so happened to be a rhino that me and my guest had spent quite a considerable amount of time with from the night before. We probably sat with him for about maybe like 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And it wasn't even very far away from the camp that he was poached. And
so it was fresh when you found it. It was hours.
Yeah, it was very, very fresh. And that was the first carcass. And obviously it's hugely disturbing. It was to me, but it was also to my guests as well. And it was through that I thought, okay, well, I would like to try and do something. So I fundamentally started this foundation on my own, firstly to raise awareness, because at that stage in 2011, we had, foreigners coming over to South Africa and they didn't even know what poaching really was, or they didn't know why someone would want to poach a rhino. So I wanted to start educating the foreigners that were visiting, as well as the people living locally around the reserves. And then along with the support from these people, I realized that I actually could start raising funding for projects that I found, good projects that I wanted to
doing good work. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I think if you're closer to the ground, you can understand what's effective. I haven't heard too many scams around rhino conservation. I've heard of one or two, but it's great, I think, for an international tourist to have someone that says this is legitimate, this is not. Before we go further with that, this show is going to have regular segments, and one of them is going to be getting to know people in 10 quick questions.
Ooh.
So, idea now of your organization. Now we need to know who you are. How is it? Verbal Rorschach test. How did you become you? You're now in conservation. So it can be a one-word answer. It can be more than that if you'd like. But first off, who is your wildlife hero?
My wildlife hero is actually someone that I work with. Okay. I'm very lucky. He's a section ranger in the Kruger National Park. Yeah. His name's Richard Sarri.
Yes. Okay, great. There you are. Name would be nice. At least shout out to the guys.
Richard Sarri.
Okay. What animal do you most like to see in the wild?
I believe it or not, and I'm really embarrassed about this. I have still in 10 years not seen an aardvark.
That no reason to be embarrassed. I think I've been in the bush almost 10 years and I saw 4 in 1 year and haven't seen them.
Thanks.
So yeah, all in one go.
Yeah. Well, it's a tough one.
And now this is the one you're going to have trouble with a short answer, I imagine. Are rhinos smart?
They have big hearts.
Yeah. Okay, so that we can come back to that one.
Okay, let's come back.
We'll come back to that. Okay,
yeah.
So who's going to play you in the movie of your life?
Ooh.
Everybody's thought of it.
No, absolutely not. Maybe not Angelina Jolie. She's a bit past my time now. Yeah, she does. She does. I don't even know who all like the new and younger upcoming people are. I mean, it would have to be someone very young, obviously, you know, but I don't know. Maybe like a Anne Hathaway.
There we are. All right. Okay, so we're going into superpowers here. We live in a world where we spend more time watching Marvel films than documentaries. So if you could take an animal superpower, would you like to be able to run like a cheetah, swim like a dolphin, fly like a peregrine falcon, or is there some other skill or attribute an animal has that you'd like? Fart like a zebra. I don't know. What might it be?
Well, at the moment, let me tell you, being pregnant, yeah, I'm not far off from that.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, this is a bit of a weird one, but have you ever watched how a squirrel moves?
That's how big their nuts are.
Yeah, and they can move with those nuts too. A squirrel is like the fastest thing I have ever seen in my life. I mean, I've had a few pet squirrels, and they are just fascinating to watch. I think I'd like to move like a squirrel.
Yeah, that's great. I love that answer. Yeah, and again, I mean, they are the most, I think, acrobatic animal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And having had pet ones, you know, it's partly those sharp, really sharp little claws. It just means they can grip on anything.
Yeah, it's very, very amazing. Such like long little fingernails as well. And then, you know, they're very meticulous with the way they use them and open marula nuts and grooming themselves. They are like obsessively grooming themselves all day with their little fluffy tails and their whiskers. And yeah, I think squirrels are very underrated. And I know lots of people always, you know, complain about them being vermin and awful, but they are amazing.
Well, I think if you're a foreign visitor to Africa and a guide points out a squirrel, unless you're from Australia or Antarctica, you're going to be a little underwhelmed by them.
Right.
Which is a pity. It's not fair, but the world is not fair.
No, it's not.
Okay, now, as I wrote this question, I wasn't aware that you were 8 months pregnant, so you got a bit of a leave pass. Have you picked up any new skills in lockdown? It doesn't matter if it's not a good one. Mine is screaming. I never used to, but now a lot.
So, you become a screamer?
2 children under 5, and we're basically it's the most crap season of Big Brother ever. We're all locked in a house. We're not going to win $1 million. We're spent it. It's gone. On gym.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, there we go.
So any new skills? Did you pick up anything while you were locked down?
Yeah, eating a lot.
Yeah.
Lots of eating. Yeah, I haven't been. It hasn't been a very mobile pregnancy for me. It's been a very difficult one. So, yeah, I honestly have not. I wasn't one of those people, you know, I met, especially in the beginning of lockdown, everyone was like, oh, I'm going to, you know, work out this many times a week, and I'm going to start painting, and I'm going to do this course, and I'm going to, you know, I couldn't really do anything. It was quite unfortunate. So no, just eating.
Also, for the viewers or listeners, Lee-Anne does live in the bush. It's not as if she can go for a little pregnancy waddle around. That is exactly what carnivores are looking for, is an animal moving uncomfortably. So, yeah, may as well
And also,
mince meat.
yeah, exactly. Also, just by the way, that also didn't work very well in pregnancy because the cravings, it wasn't just popping off to the shop to go buy an ice cream or a grilled cheese sandwich, Yeah.
Yeah. As long as you didn't have cravings for bat, you're fine.
Yeah.
So,
none of that.
I have to admit, I started off with this thinking, well, they're only going to see me from the waist down. It doesn't matter if I wear track pants. And so, sorry, everybody. Yeah. Do you have any tattoos? What of? Do you regret them?
So I have two on my wrists. Oh, hello. There. That one says breathe. Just a reminder to breathe. Yeah. And then this one is Africa. Can you see? Oh, wait. Hold on. There we go.
So I'm guessing it's the right way up for you, or you're one of those people that turns the southern hemisphere this way up. Either that or was mirror imaging. I was seeing Africa upside down there.
Anyway. Sorry? Oh.
It looked upside down.
Yeah,
hopefully
it's supposed to, apparently your tattoo's supposed to show out to the it's not, it's upside down for me. Apparently I don't count.
Okay. Anybody watching or listening today should read one book about Africa or conservation. What should that book be?
Sure. That is a great question. There's so many. I think a book that I've always recommended, particularly to my guests, just because it's quite an emotive story, is The Elephant Whisperer.
Yeah.
Have you read that? Yeah.
I have, yeah.
Yeah. I just think that's a nice general book for anyone wanting to visit Africa or has come on safari, to read. It's a great story.
It was one of the things that inspired my wife to come on safari, which is, of course, how we met.
There we go.
Yeah.
Spot on.
Okay, so what animal don't you like? And if you need a leave pass, you can choose all of Nickelback.
That's funny. Okay.
So?
Which animal do I not like? Sure. Oh, okay. I'm not a big fan of monitor lizards.
Right.
Yeah. I think I have a thing about them. I find them very creepy. And then another strange one is an ostrich. I struggle to stop anywhere near an ostrich. Like, I think it might be a bit of a weird big bird thing that I have. Yeah.
I know, a surprising number of people who are afraid or at least strongly off-put by birds. So
I'm not one of those people. Exactly. I'm not one of those people. It's just it's an odd animal. It's a very odd animal. And I've seen those videos of ostriches chasing people on their bikes and things, and it's like nightmare material. So
Okay, so that's 10 questions. I think everybody's got a better idea now of who you are. So we're going to come back to horns are not medicine. You go what you're doing. You're educating both the people that live around the reserve, the tourists that visit it, and then recommending or gathering funds for causes. Has any of that changed due to COVID? Well, obviously there's no tourists, but beyond that, have you seen a change? Are you hearing about a spike in poaching, a decrease in poaching? Do you think that there's some lasting trend here with the demand for rhino horn?
Yes. So what is quite interesting is that
so English sun. Yes.
Oh, brutal.
Yeah.
Absorb that stuff. So with COVID, what has been quite fascinating is that we have found a considerable drop in poaching, certainly in the Kruger National Park area and the greater Kruger Park area where I live. And, you know, we were in the beginning of this quite nervous because we thought, this is now a time where the parks are going to be closed. No one's allowed to come in anymore. So there are going to be less eyes out helping, you know, our field rangers and reporting any suspicious activity and so on. And yeah, what it shows us actually is that the most, I'd say, honestly, 95% of poaching incursions that take place are all due to informants. So people working in and around reserve areas. You know, the gates are also opened. When the gates are open and people are coming through, lots of the time, you know, guys are putting 4 or 5 people in the car, and then someone might hop out. You know, some just drop them off in the park somewhere so they can get in a lot easier. But I think it's been quite an eye-opening statistic for everyone to see that. I think it was something like it's something like 45% decrease at the moment in poaching this year. So
that's because I know I'm still very involved in the safari business in Botswana and Namibia in particular, and there was an initial spike in poaching with lockdown, and we attributed that to a lack of tourism movement. You know, tourists on a vehicle are an anti-poaching unit. They're a deterrent anyway.
Yeah.
But the current idea is that there's actually no way for the poachers, once they have, or the middleman, actually let's not be gender biased here, the middle person, the kingpin in Tanzania was a woman. Yeah. Queen pin. This is very confusing times. But
the main guy.
Certainly what we found in Botswana and Namibia was that nobody wants to sit on a stockpile of illegal goods, and there was no movement even of cargo. So we think that the demand may still exist, or perhaps the economies are subdued enough that there's nobody thinking of rhino horn and ivory at the moment. But either way, it also seems to have dropped off throughout the areas in Southern Africa that I'm aware of, which is
amazing
to COVID.
Yeah, it's a surprise. It's such a big surprise because also, you know, consideration was the fact that all of the lodges that have been closed down for the bigger part of this year, all of the staff that work for them, you know, they haven't been able to, lots of them were laid off from their jobs, and a lot of them had huge salary cuts. So, you know, for many of those people, their bread and butter was no longer. And so we were really concerned about just even that fact alone. So, you know, we even started an initiative in this area. The community that I'm closest to over here, called Valfadind and Klubakani, are, you know, they have 75% unemployment rate. It's one of the four poorest communities in South Africa. It's extremely poor, and you know, we're right next to the Kruger National Park. So this is not good. So what we immediately did was started food packages initiatives all over the place, you know, just to try and show some support and keep people fed, because what we didn't want was people coming into the reserves and start looking to poach not rhinos, but bush meat, you know, food, whatever, anything.
But if they're using snares, it's non-selective, and it could well be a rhino's foot that gets caught in it anyway.
Yeah, it could be a wild dog, it's anything.
Yeah, anybody that's unfamiliar with this, it's one of the simplest, cheapest, and with those two being simple and cheap, a wire snare is used a lot across Africa, and
very simple.
Non-selective. So a poacher will find a trail that is used by wildlife, that is made by wildlife, by regularly in one area, and they lay a snare there that, as the animal's leg moves through, or occasionally it's set at neck height of an antelope, it pulls tight, and the more they struggle, the tighter it pulls. And it's both a strangulation, asphyxiation, depending upon where it is. But it being non-selective, there are many, many cases of elephant, rhino, hippo even getting caught in it. And they might even tear it off the tree or termite mound it's attached to, but that's still pulling in. It's a garrote around the limb. And it's very unlikely that that animal will live a productive life. Most likely it'll die. It hits the predators. They're devastating. The wire snare is probably one of the most devastating weapons in Africa. So yeah, I can understand that. And again, I know of similar work being done in Botswana, and it's something that is going to carry on. A company called Natural Selection that I'm involved with, and they've realized that feeding of the villagers, not just the staff, is huge in terms of poaching. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, so in terms of poaching alleviation in more normal times, there's everything from what I always call the boots and bullets approach, which is men or women. It's increasingly seeing female anti-poaching units, which is great, on the ground, and it's paramilitary style. There's some more way out ones, like you hear of people who want to make fake rhino horn and flood the market with it. I'm not sure how you flood a market of 1.4 billion people, but I like their lateral thinking. And then, of course, poisoning of horns was another one that was going around for a while there. Have you heard of that? Is there anything offbeat like that you've heard of that is effective in stopping rhino poaching or slowing it down even?
No, not any of those that you just mentioned. What we are doing a lot of in South Africa at the moment is, as you know, is dehorning, rhino dehorning. And that, it has to happen. If I was a private landowner with rhinos on it, I would most certainly also dehorn my rhinos, because when all your neighbors are doing it and you are not, you're pretty much a sitting duck. And we also, I've been part of many dehornings, and it is sad, but it has to happen. A rhino horn does grow back, so a lot of people actually don't know that. Rhino horn can take about 1.5 years or 2 years to grow back, and it's temporary. It's a temporary solution, but as I say, that for the moment is a process that we are definitely taking quite seriously all over South Africa. Lots of these private landowners as well the sad thing is many private landowners don't even want rhinos on their property anymore, and that is heartbreaking. That is where the problem lies. That's a huge, huge problem. The rhinos in the Kruger National Park and Sabi Sands and these big reserves that have huge anti-poaching teams, that's obviously it is a problem what's going on there, but the problem is when private landowners are giving up their rhinos, they're literally giving them away. They don't want them. They're giving them away for free. They're not even selling them because they cannot afford the anti-poaching unit every month to protect them. So that, if they are going to keep their rhinos, if they can dehorn them, that is definitely what we want. We don't want the rhinos to be off all the land where they have lived forever and ever.
Yeah. So we've got a question here. Do rhinos need their horns? The answer is yes, they do need them, and they certainly use them. But it's a little bit like saying, do we need our fingernails? That would be my brief answer to it. That, we need them. You really like having them. It's sad not to have them. But if you're going to take something from me, or chainsaw off half my face, possibly while I'm alive, and it is that brutal, I'd go with and of course you get it. The fingernails is done under anesthetic. Not brave. I don't know if you'd agree with that, or if you have another take on that.
No, I think that's a perfect answer. It's rhinos. yeah, it would be lovely for them to have their horns. I mean, they use it for various things, for greeting each other, for protecting their calves, for fighting and holding off trespassers that may want to take over their territories. The way these dehornings are done are it's strategic. It's not like landowners are going to be dehorning one dominant bull and the other dominant bull next door to him is not dehorned. That's not going to be fair, because we know who's going to win that fight. Okay, the guy with the horn. So these are all very thought through methods that take place. It's not just a matter of randomly dehorning some rhinos. All of them get dehorned. They can live without their horns. It's, again, like you said, would you rather see or would you rather have no rhino, or would you rather have a dehorned rhino? And that's where we are right now.
Yeah, and there's another question came in that might inspire a bit of terror for you, and perhaps it's the next wave of anti-rhino poaching, is that asking, aren't ostriches used as security animals in Africa? Now, I heard of the geese in ancient Rome who apparently warned the city of the Visigoths on approach. And to be honest, if I was unwelcome in a place and out of the darkness, I just saw neck and legs and
I'm out.
If it's not true, it should be. I've never heard of it, but it this maybe this first great idea from deep in the bush.
It is a great idea. I certainly would not try and penetrate that property, but I have not heard about that. So I'd have to go look that up. Yeah. I think I will. Sounds like a good idea.
I'm curious now, and it's also that I am not one of these people. I mean, a certain countryman of mine who was very popular a while ago used to always, oh, they're beautiful and they're so intelligent. And, he's talking about blowfly. It's one brain cell and wings. I don't know that you could train an ostrich. I don't think they're bright enough to train, but
I have been to the ostrich farm. My parents took me to the ostrich farm in Oudtshoorn when I was a kid. I don't know if you've ever gone there, but I mean, I think this is probably where the damage started for me, because they made me get on an ostrich and ride the ostrich. So you can actually hold on to the ostrich's neck and actually steer it with its neck. Yeah. So I don't know if that means it's clever, but it can do it.
Here's a job for retired jockeys. They can go into anti-poaching.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Yeah, the unemployment, so you've got retired jockeys in the area, there's two birds with one stone, one very big bird. Okay, so we're going to go to another bit of a segment now. It's called Why Give a Shit. So
it's called what?
Why Give a Shit.
Oh, okay, great.
So you and I could probably sit and talk rhinos for hours and hours very contentedly, but of course that's an unusual fascination to have in life. Wildlife, a real demonstration of that is if you look at the charitable donations given in both the UK and US, less than 1 cent of every dollar given to charity goes to wildlife.
Wow.
Infinitely more is given to children or to illnesses, and kind of okay with that. Sick children are not killing rhinos by getting that money, but the arts gets more. Ballet is taking money from rhinos. I deeply resent ballet for doing that. But so imagine for a moment I'm not someone that's lived in a tent for 10 years because I so loved animals. My name's Wayne. I'm from Minnesota. I don't really think about rhinos very much. I like golf. I worry about my car payments. Pretty sure my wife knows about Brenda. Those things. I'm just not thinking about rhinos. So tell me, why do I care if rhinos go extinct?
Wow, that's a good question. Yeah, that's a really good question, because it's very true. It is true. If you are sitting in Minnesota, or wherever in the world you're sitting, and you have never, well, not necessarily never come on a safari, because not everyone can come on a safari. But if you have no sort of love for nature, for going, walking in the mountains nearby where you live, or going to swim in the sea at the coast where you live, if you don't really have or find any joy in nature, then that is where we do have a problem. That's why it is so important to instill these sort of things into our children, from a young age. Like take them camping, let them learn how to make a fire, let them climb trees, let them get dirty, let them feel the wind in their hair and the rain, and just be outside. It's so important. And I think more and more kids are just spending too much time inside. And with that, comes a big disconnection to nature. Just something simple as running barefoot in mud, or feeling, the grass underneath your feet. It's so important. And these kids nowadays are much more interested in screen time rather than green time. But we really do need, if people are fortunate enough and have enough money to come on a safari, that is number one. That is like that. You can never come on a safari and turn your back on a rhino, or any animal for that matter, any cause that might, you'll be way more touched by various causes, even if it's the brown bear in the States. It doesn't necessarily have to be an African animal. I'm just saying that you will definitely find that people are more open to finding a cause that they can support, whether it be an animal or a tree or a bird or an insect. It's just trying to get people to be more involved in nature. But it is certainly a concern when you find that Wayne in Minnesota is not interested in Africa. And
you remember my name.
I don't. Oh, I'm a ranger.
Brenda, is that you?
Very good. It's trying to get those people involved. So I actually last year I wrote 2 kiddies books, and it was basically I was trying to bring the idea was to bring safari to children, because I know not everyone can come on an African safari or a safari wherever in the world. And the idea was to try and teach them through pictures about animals and signs, lots of tracking and listening and looking through pages and photos in a book. And the idea behind that was to try and get the kids interested in, even though it was just a photograph, just try and make them more inquisitive, and maybe think, well, geez, when I'm 21 years old, I'm going to ask my parents if we can go on a safari, or I want to one day make enough money for myself to take my family on a safari. That's what we need. We need more people visiting wild spaces, and not necessarily just in Africa, because there are wild spaces all over the world. It's beautiful everywhere.
So something I've seen with kids as well, before I come to this question here, is the process. So often as a guide to the people in the vehicle, you're like a magician. You're driving, you stop, and you wait, and then a leopard walks out, and nobody can figure out how you knew it was on its way. And of course, it was the squirrels, your friend the squirrels, or Franklin's from calling.
That's right.
There's enough evidence. The Franklin's on top of a bush, not under it, so the predator's on the ground. There's all those things. Monkeys calling you, that's your 100%. Yeah. And so with that, but if you teach children that, it's like teaching them a magic trick, and they love it. They love the process, the steps to it. You said tracking. And I think that is then something that absolutely sticks to them and makes them crave that wilderness, or even just going to their local park and paying more attention to the insects in it. Totally. And completely open to that. Yeah. They think they want the screen time, but I think and I'm as guilty of this parent. It's a very convenient babysitter.
Absolutely.
we've got an entire generation that grew up sounding like Peppa Pig, and that is not a good thing. She's a nasal little twerp. So yeah, much rather they go out and sound like a warthog instead.
Yes, 100%.
So great question here. Should people support wildlife causes at home first? And can they do more supporting causes in their backyard? I think that, and again, Lee-Anne, I'd love your take on this, but to my mind, it depends on where your backyard is and how well protected it is. If you're in, it's not necessarily in developed nations. There's plenty of developed nations where wildlife are under siege. If you've got, say, a lunatic at the helm who's going to allow drilling in pristine wilderness areas, or de-gazetting national parks, whatever it might be. So being in the first world doesn't mean your backyard doesn't need protecting. But there are various wildlife crises around the world that are in desperate need of attention. Normally the easiest thing is money. And people say, well, we don't have money. It's like, well, time. Do you have a year? Can you come out and volunteer? So, I've got some money. Let me find you the money. So I think it's about research. And I know that people, again, they're time poor. So, yeah, you know, I think you've got to look into it. Almost every single community has a little conservation club or a wilderness type club. Ask them what needs doing. And I think that start in your own backyard and then expand into the world.
Yeah.
But if you agree with that.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. I mean, you always have to do your research, and you know, if something, I think number one is if something touches you, it touches you, and go with that. But do always, you know, look further into it. Don't just hand over, you know, a check if you haven't really understood where and how much of and why that money is going to that place, because it may very well be used somewhere better. It could be supporting the same species, but maybe in a different organization. It just depends on, you know, you always got to look at things like admin charges and
absolutely, yeah,
all those little things.
I'm personally more a fan of sort of single cause charities like yours, which is saying, here is a problem, and it is here, and we're looking at it. Is impossible to save the world, but if everybody's trying to save their own backyard, that could be a lot more effective.
Absolutely.
Something that would actually affect your backyard. I don't know if you've heard much about work being done to quell demand. We all know in Africa, again, I mentioned the bullets and boots strategy. It's a big part of anti-poaching. But of course, if we can reduce demand, if not cut it out entirely, that's going to have the biggest potential impact. Have you ever worked with anybody that's working in Asia? And when I say Asia, I know that, again, we live in a time where there's a finger wagging. The reality is that the markets for rhino horn are primarily Vietnam and China, and then certain expat communities from those countries in the US and Australia. Apparently Melbourne is one of the biggest markets in the world.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, with that, I think it's those places. It's incredibly important. There are people out there educating, making noise. It's been, we know it's effective. Yao Ming, one man, the basketballer, apparently reduced shark fin consumption by 33% across the whole of China by speaking out of it. That is a massive impact. So again, are you partnered with anybody like that, or do you know of any of those going on?
I know, I mean, I know a lot of these organizations going on. I don't work very closely with any based in Asia. I love seeing these campaigns that are based there, because that is really where you do want to be. When I started our Horny is Not Medicine, that was actually my sort of my direction I was going in. I actually wanted to do more educating in Asia. And actually go there, but you know, I didn't end up doing that. But the Asian market is really where it's the core, And for instance, it's a difficult place to penetrate. But for instance, there's a video here from Kruger National Park that did get a lot of screen time all over the world, but not in Asia. And this was actually filmed here on this property where I work, but it was of a rhino cow that had been dehorned, but also defaced, but still alive. Right. And it was like, it's probably the worst thing I've ever seen. And what we did was we just did a few subtitles in Mandarin and Cantonese. And I had a guest that was with me at that stage that wanted to take it over. And he said, because obviously Facebook and so on is closed off to the rest of the world.
The great firewall, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not possible to penetrate their social media in that way. But he agreed to take it over for me. And within 24 minutes of him putting it up, it was removed, which was quite eye-opening. And, I think a lot of what's going on in Asia with the consumption of rhino horn, I do think that a lot, and this is according to many people I've spoken to that live over there, many of them don't seem to know how the horn is harvested. There are rhino farms in Asia, in China, where you dehorn a rhino. As we know, we all can dehorn a rhino, and without killing it. And they have these farms that they're harvesting horn from, and that is where a lot of these people consuming it think it comes from. They don't realize that it's actually an animal that's being brutally murdered in South Africa, and the whole knock-on with all the various people involved and gangs and so on related to that horn that they are consuming. So it's a lot darker, I think, than the general public may think.
I don't think certainly there's no state-sponsored education in those countries about the evils of poaching or consumption of wildlife products. And even now, the crazy thing is that with obviously this COVID, whether it was the bat or not, or pangolin or not, it obviously crossed to us from wildlife. China did shut down its wildlife markets, but at the same time did a big push into traditional medicine to treat COVID. And that again brings up the spectrum of tiger bones and so on. And it's incredibly frustrating. This, I felt, was their chance to stand up and to say, we're just not going to allow this to happen. So 2 questions popped up quickly about pandemic linked to wildlife trafficking. Yes, absolutely. These crossover events are because we encroach into wild spaces and we're capturing wild animals for consumption, the pet trade, whatever it might be. But also the prior question which disappeared was, is it not linked to terrorism? Yes, and to human trafficking, to narcotics trafficking. Some pretty solid investigative work is being done in the source, so they're the end markets, and the very same people running the criminal syndicates supplying rhino horn in particular are the same people that are kidnapping young women, and I presume also young boys at times, to sell into the sex trade. It is a form of slavery, which is still going on. They're the same people running heroin, and the same shipments that are bringing in heroin into California, into Australia, as I mentioned, with Melbourne being a market, bringing in rhino horn as well. It's got value. It's a commodity. They are marketing it more effectively. And then you think of, as I said, less than 1 cent per dollar of charity going to conservation. We cannot fight people that have heroin money behind them on a like basis for funding. We've got to be smarter. That's all we've hopefully got. Or we could use ostriches. That might be
it. Also, with that question, just just to go deep for a moment. Also, what is your definition of terrorism as well? Because terrorism, we could really go deep on this, but what these what the poachers are doing directly to South Africa is stealing our natural heritage, and you can consider that a form of terrorism as well?
Well, I was actually crunching some numbers, which is not anything I'm particularly good at, earlier. And if a COVID-like event, so COVID is just about to hit 1 million deaths in humans, and every one of those deaths is a tragedy, but it's nowhere near being a threat to our species. So if you kind of say December 31st is when we're really talking about it just for convenience, it's taken 10 months to get to 1 million deaths. It would take, at this rate, more than 4 years to wipe out New Zealand. It would take over 100 years to take out the US, and almost well over 1,000 years before China was gone, and over 10,000 before humans at this rate, if we had no babies in the meantime. No threat to us.
Wow.
No threat to our species. If it had hit Sumatran rhinos, they would have made it to late January. And then the Javan rhino as well would have gone. The black rhino would have been early March, because 5,000 people were dead by early March. We've got about 5,000 black rhinos, 5.5. The white rhino, the most populous with near 20,000 animals, roughly, would have made it to late March, and every single one had been done. That's how few of these animals.
It's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah, we think that this is a big event. So you're talking about terrorism. COVID is a terrorism event on so many levels if you're an animal.
Right, yeah. I like that.
So just moving on a bit from here, I'm going to go to somewhere a bit positive.
Peter, sorry, I just realized, hold on a second. Talk about something quickly. Give me 1 minute. I need to get my charger because I'm on 5%.
Okay, run off.
I won't be long. Okay.
That's all right. A question has popped up while you go off to get some power. I'm guessing it's actually a sneaky pregnancy pee stop as well. Where's the best place to see rhinos in Africa? And the name is an anagram for a poacher, so I'm not going to say. No, it is. There are many places where it's really easy to see them. And again, I'm a bit nervous saying that, but the Kruger Park, which Lee-Anne's been talking about, and the private reserve surrounding it, the Sabi Sands, you're almost guaranteed to see rhino. The reserves in Natal, also in South Africa, very high densities of rhinos there, and they're pretty well protected. In Namibia, up in Etosha National Park, there's a couple of waterholes in particular, Okukuyo being one. Very well known. There's some private reserves nearby, one called Safari Hook, really, really good for rhino sightings. And then in East Africa, the Labour Conservancy has done amazing work with the rhinos up there. Also a good place to see them. Surely more, and Nick, I know you actually do know the answer to that question, so jot any down in the general chat box for the ones I've missed. But Lee-Anne, we did get a bit heavy there, so let's
lighten up
to something a bit positive.
Okay.
And I think we all get into conservation because we have positive experiences with animals, wild or domestic. What has been your favorite rhino moment?
Wow. There've been so many. It's been 10 years of spending hours sometimes with these animals. I love watching. I always find that the sightings with rhinos, kind of when you can hear the whimpers and the little squeals that they make when they communicate with each other, it's something that every guest that sits with me always finds so surprising, because they are just these, big bulky animals, and you expect them to be more sort of like snorty and like make heavier sounds. And I think a lot of the fun ones have always been the little cows and their calves jumping around and playing with each other. The little calves tend to be quite rambunctious and really nearly naughty in a way, and like to harass the older bulls maybe, or anyone else that's hanging around the mother, maybe trying to get a little bit of a whiff on her scent and see if she's ready to mate. And I just love seeing how feisty those little calves are, kind of wanting to protect their big mothers, from these bulls. But yeah, it always tends to be the sightings with rhinos, though you can hear them more, you know, and also the deep breaths that they take. And, yeah, I think that those sightings are quite soothing for a lot of people, because at first sight it's like, oh, there's a rhino. Like, should we be scared? Is it going to charge our vehicle? Are we too close? I always tend to park quite far from a rhino, but because they have such bad eyesight, they'll always approach you to come have a look. And that's kind of nice, you know, when they approach you, and then everyone's like, okay, is this all right? And then they just try and have a better look at you and look at the vehicle and smell you, and then carry on feeding around you. And that's when you can hear those deep breaths, and, you know, they blow out that air out of their nose, and it's quite special and very touching for people in the vehicle at that time.
Great. Yeah. Okay, so here's a bit of a left field one, perhaps, is when would you consider your work done? Is your aim, would you, is the end goal that one day you can shut down Horn is Not Medicine?
Wow, that's a great question. You know, it is funny, because this year of being pregnant, I did think about that, and I wondered how it would feel to not have be running this thing that I've had since 2012, and literally working on it daily. Even while I'd be on holiday, traveling, you know, I was always doing something on my phone, communicating with a donor, or making a social media post, or whatever. And I think I would be quite lost without it, to be honest. I don't think there's, I mean,
so if the poachers stop going after rhinos, you will, just to justify it, or are you going to give that a miss?
No, because to be honest,
you need to answer that. I don't expect you to start poaching rhinos because nobody else is.
No, I think that's a long time away still, you know, setting all these, setting everything in place that needs to be put in place, not only for the protection of rhinos, for lions, for elephants, for pangolins, for every single wild animal out there. It's going to be work that we have to keep on advancing at as well forever. It will never change. The more the human population grows, the more we have to keep making new changes and to technologies and tools that we are currently using. So never.
Sadly, I agree that is not pessimism. That's just realism.
Yeah.
Okay, so just another quick few, and I think then we'll let you go off and have as many pee breaks as you need.
Oh wow, it's gone so fast, the time.
Yeah.
Just getting into it.
It's not like a tax audit, hopefully. It's a nice thing.
No,
so
getting into it.
We live in an age where it's very hard to trust information. It's very hard to trust even news outlets. Is there something you hear repeated about rhinos that drives you bananas just because it's so patently wrong? And is there something people should know about rhinos that they typically don't?
Rhinos are what I do actually, you know, I don't like to get too emotive when it comes to animals, because sometimes conservation and emotions do not help to make good decisions when you combine those two. What I do find amazing about rhinos, that I think people listening would like to know, is that they are actually very emotive animals, and that is just through what I've witnessed with various members of or various rhinos that have been poached. Maybe well, there was one that had lost its brother, a younger brother that had been poached, maybe 3 years younger than the male that survived, and he went back to this young carcass for about 3 days, and he stood on top or over the little calf and just rested his chin on top of the dead calf. And then, you know, the hyenas were trying to come in and start cleaning up, and you would chase them all away all the time. I've seen the same lots with calves who have lost their mothers, because I'm sure everyone knows often a rhino cow, which always has a calf with her, often the little calf won't be killed, and the mother will obviously be dead and cannot feed the youngster anymore, and the youngster doesn't know what to do with itself, so it also will hang around its mother for days and days and days. And that's often when we come in and we get the chopper in, and we're able to actually airlift the calf to an orphanage nearby where it can be safe and live, for the next few years of its life. So yeah, I think people watching would like to know that rhinos are actually emotive, even though they look like these big, scary animals with a big horn on their face. They are actually very sweet, big heart, as I said.
They don't need to be bright if and I've seen those photos and heard those stories, and it's heartbreaking, and it's heartbreaking, and it's enraging, and it's great that you're doing what you're doing, and I think everybody making an effort out there it's really positive, and particularly with education.
Yeah.
Again, it's a hard subject not to get heavy with. We do have, as I said, an animal that is so severely under threat that it could be wiped out very quickly. But to finish on a more positive note, what good news do you have for us? I kind of said it for you earlier, but there's not much poaching now. But is there other good news?
Yeah, exactly. That would be the good news. But with that news, it doesn't mean it's not just going to be unrecognized by various organizations, specifically the organization that I work for. Our Horny No Medicine has been institutionalized by the Southern African Wildlife College, where I work. So this is where all the field ranger training takes place, the aerial surveillance units where they do training, and where we train off-leash canines to track poachers. So there's a lot of good work going here, and like I just said, we just spoke about COVID and what effect the pandemic has had on the rhino poaching, and the decrease of rhino poaching is definitely of interest, and going to play a big role in things like having staff all polygraphed every 6 months, all of these kind of things, Yes, and more gate checks when people come into the vehicles, checking the trunk of the car, checking underneath the car, all of that kind of stuff. It's people think that just happens all the time. It doesn't, because it's hard. The Kruger National Park sees over 1 million visitors every year, and sometimes it's not possible to have all of these checks done, especially if you are understaffed. And that's also the hard thing is, okay, well, because we know that lots of staff are providing information and acting as informants, does that mean that we employ less people? Because there's repercussions with that too. If you are employing less people, how are those people going to go back into the community without a job? What are they going to do to support themselves? So there's a massive knock-on effect all the time. And all of these, every single day we're learning something new. And I can tell you from what I see happening here, there are some really amazing people that live for this cause. And, they eat, sleep, breathe it. They don't have Christmases. They don't have birthdays. They miss weddings. They are there, they are here, and they are the people that we all need to be supporting and thanking.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a huge shout to the people in the field, the ones that are getting shot at and so on, and the dogs as well. I know you actually support the canine initiative as well. I mean, you've got brave dogs that are out there, baying poachers. That's extraordinary work. One of my good friends is actually doing his master's on that to see if it's cheaper than helicopters. So many strands to this. I think you'd enjoy speaking with him. But
send him here.
Very much enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you, Peter.
Very good luck for the next month, and then the next however many years after that you're parent.
18. Hopefully
18. You might get lucky. I left home at 16, and I gave my parents the easy way out.
Fantastic. You seem like a
quick
stand-up
question
guy.
here. Thank you. Quick question here. The name of your books, those that you wrote for the kids.
They are called Anti-Africa, and the first one's just called Anti-Africa. It's about a little ranger or a little girl that wants to be a ranger one day when she grows up. And then the other one is called Safari with Me, which is the more educational one for older kids with the pictures. But yeah, you can go to my...
And where can people get those? Where can people get those?
Well, you can go, I've got the link on my Instagram. So if you want to go there, you can either go to Our Horn is Not Medicine or Annie.Africa.
Yeah, great. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very, very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
I'm quite sure that this video should come with a link to Horn is Not Medicine, which I think is fantastic for people to have a further look into that. Please, anybody donate. We always talk about what a cup of coffee costs and how much value that could have. It's incredibly important. Now, yes, poaching may have decreased, but it's going to come back, and it's going to be great to be prepared for that. Again, thank you for your time. Yeah.
I just remembered something that your viewers might be interested in. We, at the moment, if you go onto the Our Horn is Not Medicine page on Instagram, we have the Wildlife Ranger Challenge happening at the moment, which is a Tusk Trust initiative, and it's to support all of Africa's rangers. You may have seen this going around on social media. And anyone that comes onto our page and makes a donation through the Just Giving link, there's actually a organization that will match every single dollar. So your donation will be doubled. So if that is something that you would like to do before the end of the year, it will be matched. So yeah, do think about that. The funding goes to 100% of the funding goes to all of these initiatives that are taking place here.
Fantastic. Again, Lee-Anne, thank you, and best of luck with all of your adventures. A few coming up. It just gets worse from here in terms of parenting.
I believe
thanks
so.
for everybody that logged in and who's watching it later, and thank you to the UPROAR team for putting all of this together.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks
Bye.
all. Bye.